It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I'm not talking about Christmas, not stupid holiday shit. I'm talking about the top 10 best metal albums of the year. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Cheers. And welcome to the Metal Meltdown's top 10 best metal albums of 2023. That's right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. We've pretty much reached the end of the year as far as new releases are concerned, which means it is time to start shoving out that standard end-of-the-year content, and we will start suited up, of course, with the top 10 best metal albums of the year. And I gotta say, it's been a really good year overall. Lots of great albums, lots of cool, unexpected twists and turns and surprises. This was a genuinely difficult list to put together. It's also been a great year for the Metal Meltdown in general. We've done more album reviews, more fanboy drinking games, more live streams. We've done special, more unique videos like Separating the Art from the Artist and Uncle Melty's Kitchen. We've done interviews with Chris Reifert from Autopsy and Josh Elmore from Cattle Decapitation and even Brendan Small, the creator of Death Clock and Metalocalypse. And all the while, I've had the opportunity to connect with so many cool people who are subscribed to this channel, who are in the Discord, who are just watching and commenting and sharing videos, and that's awesome. Thank you for a great year. I love each and every goddamn one of you with all my goddamn heart. Let's do this. Let's go. Top 10 best metal albums of 2023. Fuck yes. Now, I should note this is not really a ranked or numbered list. This is not really like your standard top 10 where we're going from number 10 all the way to number 1. I've just selected 10 albums that I think are the best of the year, and I will be talking about each in order of release. And when we do get to the number 1 album of the year, I will simply tell you what it is. First off, though, we have a couple of honorable mentions, albums that I thoroughly enjoyed, but unfortunately just didn't make the final cut. The first of these albums is Sage of Shekinah from Contrarian, released March 17th via Willowtip Records. Very cool, ferocious, nuanced, old-school technical and progressive death metal, very much in the vein of Cynic and Atheist, but with a more organic production, with a bit of a religious backdrop, and some really cool, exciting, like, Greek, Mediterranean musical influences woven throughout as well. Next up, we have Violent Creed of Vengeance from Smolder, released April 21st via Cruz del Sur Music, an exciting and triumphant combination of old-school epic heavy metal and epic doom metal and American power metal. It's got soaring vocals, muscular riffs, old-school metal production, and pyrotechnics and bravado. What more could you possibly want? Next up, we have The Enduring Spirit from Tomb Mold, released September 15th via $20 spin. This Canadian death metal crew went into much more playful, adventurous, cosmic, progressive, and experimental territory with this new surprise album, while remaining true to the gross and gnarly sounds that have made them so important to the modern death metal scene. In my opinion, there's very little that can beat records like Manor of Infinite Forms and Planetary Clairvoyance, but goddamn, gotta give this record some real fucking props for trying. Next up, we have Seven Crowns and Seven Seals from Sulphur Aeon, released October 13th via Van Records. Incredibly dense, ambitious, melodic, blackened death metal with cinematic vibes and the ability to summon Lovecraftian monsters beyond the comprehensible abilities of our imagination. To simply say that it's really brutal would almost be a disservice to this record. It's dark, it's creepy, it's kinda fucked in the head. And our final honorable mention is American Gothic from Wayffarer, released October 27th via Profound Lore Records. I love the fusion of, like, the history of the American Wild West and black metal. It's epic, it's cinematic, it's powerful, it's rustic, it's gritty. It's literally cowboy black metal, and I personally love it, and of all the albums we're talking about in this honorable mention section, this actually probably came the closest to ending up in the final top 10. Hey, speaking of which, let's finally start talking about the final top 10, maybe, please, and thank you. That'd be great, that'd be awesome. That is, after all, the fucking reason we're all here, so, you know, let's go do that. Let's get into that. Anytime now. Please and thank you. First up, we have the Choral Tombs from Ahab, released January 13th via Napalm Records. The self-proclaimed pioneers of Nautic Doom take inspiration from the Jules Verne's classic 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for this record, and in turn, take us on an adventure through every crushing layer of the ocean itself. At times, it can feel as if we're gently, playfully floating through the coral reefs. Look at all the cute little fishies! Dolphins! Wow! And at other times, Ahab, with the help of the weight of the ocean itself, completely drown and submerge you in chaos and darkness. It is an incredibly immersive, adventurous, and cinematic record from start to finish, filled with monolithically heavy death doom and some gorgeous clean vocals. It's not just one of the best albums of the year, it's also probably the best doom metal album of the year, and I would also say the best thing that Ahab have ever given us. Next up, we have Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags from Hellripper, released February 17th via Peaceville Records. There were a lot of motherfuckers back in February making fun of me for daring to suggest that we may have already found one of the best albums of 2023 so far. As far as I'm concerned, all of those people can eat the entirety of my asshole and dick and balls. James McBain, the mastermind behind Hellripper, is just injecting life into like the kind of classic heavy metal, first wave black metal, thrash metal spirit, kind of blending all of those sounds and styles and aesthetics together into something greasy and sleazy and mean, and bringing in more influence from Scottish literature and folklore. The result is something that's really action-packed and really exciting and really exhilarating, resulting in an album befitting of both an epic and bloody adventure through the Scottish Highlands and also getting absolutely plastered at the local Scottish pub. Like, if those venomous vocals and blazing, scorching guitar pyrotechnics and the use of literal bagpipes doesn't get you pumped up, I really don't know what to tell you, bud. Next up, we have Black Medium Current from Dodheimsgard, released April 14th via Peaceville Records. Dodheimsgard have always been champions of avant-garde and progressive black metal, but with this specific album, they've gone into incredibly experimental territory. We have moaning, wailing vocals, poetic lyricism, very raw, organic production, keyboards and strings and synthesizers, influences from new wave, from art rock, from gothic rock. The album even closes with like a full-blown piano ballad. It has psychedelic moments, it has these very existentialist moments, and it can be quite brutal and transparent and intimate. And it's absolutely enthralling as a result of all of that. Dodheimsgard really let their freak flag fly on this, and it results in some of their best and in some of their most intuitive and ambitious songcraft to date. When I reviewed this album earlier in the year, I gave it a 5 out of 5, and I said it was perfect, and I stand by that to this day. In my opinion, not just one of the best metal albums of the year, but one of the most intelligent and passionately performed and presented and produced records you'll hear in any genre in 2023. Next up, we have Terasite from Cattle Decapitation, released May 12th via Metal Blade Records. This really should not require much of an explanation. The fact is, Cattle Decapitation are icons and masters of their craft. They've been on a hot streak for quite some time now. Terasite is everything that we have come to love about Cattle Decapitation: the bombast, the brutality, the technicality, the ability to tackle like social, political, environmental issues in this extremely gruesome and urgent fashion. And now it's been backed by this really cool story of these like greedy, cannibalistic, insectoid creatures rising from the ashes of humanity and kind of dealing with the consequences of the world that we've left behind for them while trying to kind of rebuild their own society and while also succumbing to, well, greed and being fucking monsters. It's provocative, it's pummeling, it's everything Cattle Decapitation does so well, plus a little bit more. Next up, we have Hivemind Narcosis from Fantifaxaf, released June 2nd via Dark Descent Records. This album gave me headache-inducing nightmares, and I mean that in the best way possible. Some of the most obtuse, angular, deranged, like avant-garde, technical, black and extreme metal songwriting I think I've heard in a long time. It's twisted, it's scary, it's demented, and totally unpredictable. In my original review, I kind of compared the experience of listening to this album to the fable of Sisyphus, and just constantly kind of rolling a boulder uphill, hoping you'll eventually get to the top, only to fall and stumble and be crushed and have to go through the whole painful ordeal all over again. And I weirdly love it. Like, I can't wait to keep doing it. I go to the bottom of the hill and I'm like, yes, round 2, baby. This album definitely reminds me of like some of the most challenging works from like Gorguts, Blood Nord, Imperial Triumphant, Pyron Ad Nauseam. It is just a totally unrelenting, commanding, and thoroughly fascinating experience. Like I said, I cannot wait to roll that boulder up the hill like some kind of goofy, dumb motherfucker. Next up, we have Petro-Dragonic Apocalypse, or Dawn of Eternal Night, and Annihilation of Planet Earth, and the Beginning of Merciless Damnation from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released June 16th via KGLW.
Fucking King Gizzard isn't a real metal band, it's fucking poser shit, fucking hipster shit. They're just a fucking bunch of fucking
I don't give a shit. Shut the fuck up, you fucking goo-goo gaga ass fucking babies. Shut up! This is, in a way, a sequel to and an expansion of their previous endeavor into the realms of thrash metal, 2019's Infest the Rat's Nest. It's bigger, it's better, it's wilder, it's louder. We're bringing in more influences from classic heavy metal, from stoner metal, from progressive metal. We have these drum fills and these really insane riffs that wouldn't be out of place on like a Megadeth record or a Sepultura record, but we also have these more psychedelic sections with like tribal percussion that wouldn't be out of place on a Tool record, or maybe somewhat coincidentally also a Sepultura record. Lots of static, lots of feedback, it's crusty, there's a lot of enthusiasm and energy, lots of weird, monotonous, repetitive vocal patterns and layerings. And I especially love how this album kind of tackles our dependency on fossil fuels, gasoline, and cars, and like the current kind of infrastructure of the world. Almost depicting like a Mad Max-esque dystopian universe where people worship cars and they worship gasoline. And when they realize that this cult-like obsession with these things is destroying the world, and there are all these natural disasters and all these weird phenomenons, they just constantly try to look for scapegoats, and that just makes things even worse. I originally gave this thing like a 4.5 out of 5. I think I would honestly now go with a 5 out of 5. I think I honestly would say it's a perfect fucking record. And maybe tied with another album that we're going to talk about soon for Best Album of the Year. Next up, we have Infinite Psychic Depths from Outer Heaven, released July 21st via Relapse Records. I want to start off by saying that this is by no means one of the most challenging, intuitive, or ambitious records of the year. Hell, we've already talked about records from Contrarian and Tomb Mold that go into much more technical and progressive territory. So why is this album in the top 10 over stuff from the aforementioned Contrarian and Tomb Mold? Very simple. I love those albums, don't get me wrong. But this thing just goes insanely fucking harder. Like, there is not a single fucking riff, a single beat, a single breakdown, a single vocal guttural onslaught that does not go insanely, stupidly hard, that does not hype me the fuck up. There's a lot of attention to detail across this thing, and there are a lot of different dynamics. It has this really dense, beefy, muscular production. It has this kind of weird, sci-fi, psychedelic, interdimensional, multiversal kind of backdrop and concept. It has sections of weird, eerie, moaning, ethereal vocals, almost like voices from beyond cosmic realms reaching out in agony and despair. And Outer Hem also have no shame throwing in some Harm's Way, Knocked Loose-esque hardcore beatdowns and breakdowns here and there as well. It just went harder. It's just ballsier. It's just more brutal. Sorry. Next up, we have Ontological Mysterium from Horrendous, released August 18th via Season of Mist. Horrendous have been very slowly, carefully, and quietly working on this thing for quite some time now, and it consistently shows across Ontological Mysterium. It is eccentric, it is energetic, it is incredibly imaginative. It expands on that old school tech death and progressive death metal kind of vibe of Idol, but the production is much more crystal clear and punchy and polished, and there's also influences from like 80s heavy metal and thrash metal, and there are even these more epic, kind of like adventurous black metal sections with chanting vocals that wouldn't be out of place on an Enslaved record. Everything is just over the top and all over the place, and I mean that in the best way possible. And despite everything going on, Horrendous is able to kind of bring it all together into something that makes sense, into something that is palatable, into something that is accessible. Like, it should feel overwhelming, and perhaps in the hands of a less experienced and less talented band it would be, but it isn't, so there you go. Horrendous just went balls to the wall crazy, and they did whatever the fuck they wanted on this goddamn thing, and thank God for it, because it's an incredibly exciting adventure. Next up, we have Bathhouse from the Lion's Daughter, released October 13th, independently. I honestly did not think it was possible for The Lion's Daughter to top 2021's Skin Show. Its blend of, like, synth music and industrial and black metal and death metal and alternative metal was just so fucking cool and creepy. But somehow Bathhouse is able to take a sound, a formula, an aesthetic that is already so unique and so one of a kind to The Lion's Daughter and make it sound like the most revolutionary, imaginative thing ever. It's more creepy, it's more grotesque, it's more brutal, it's more dynamic, it's more flexible, and it's more intense, and there are more synths, and there's more full-on, like, extreme metal bombast as well. Like, the songs will go through all these different progressions and all these different movements and touch upon all these different genres, and it'll sometimes, as a result, just go into these insanely addictive, dance-friendly beats and rhythms and grooves. And you'll have these, like, samples and audio recordings of what can only really be described as someone being, like, very slowly, like, murdered in the dead of night. Every time I listen to this album, I have this weird fear that the creature depicted on the album artwork will, like, start to crawl out of my speakers, like that fucking girl from The Ring or some shit. And finally, this brings us to the Rime of Memory from Panopticon, released November 29th via Bind Rune Recordings. We talked about this album very recently and in great depth and detail here on the Metal Meltdown, so I'm actually going to try to keep it relatively short. But I will still say that Panopticon's blend of Appalachian folk, bluegrass, and atmospheric black metal is every bit as stellar and beautiful now as it was like many years ago when I first started hearing records like Roads to the North and Kentucky. And it's now more important and more urgent and more beautiful than ever because Austin is using it to tackle the grieving process and life and death and how we apply meaning to like certain dates and climate and environmental catastrophes, wildfires. The fact that it is such a collaborative record, too, is so exciting. Like, there's so many different guests. There's a full-blown choir that's been assembled for the record. There's so many different instruments that have been brought into the fray. Glockenspiels and 12-string basses and different flutes and accordions and whistles. There's so much done to make this as beautiful and as impactful as possible, and it works so fucking well. I gave this a 5 out of 5, and this is the album that is tied with King Gizzard for #1 album of the year. As far as I'm concerned, both of those albums can share the fucking crown. They can share the gold medal. They both won the fucking Oscar. Congratulations to all of our other nominees, though. Like I said, it really was an incredible fucking year. I mean, any one of these albums at a certain point probably could have been the #1. Bathhouse could have been the #1. Dodheimsgard for a while was the #1. And hell, while we're at it, those albums could probably be tied for #2. Like, they're gonna share the fucking silver medal, you know? I'm pretty happy with this video. I'm pretty happy with this list. I got no other albums to talk about. So now it's your turn to tell me, what do you think are some of the best albums, some of the best metal albums specifically, of 2023? And what do you think of my list? Did I get some stuff right? Did I get some stuff wrong? Did I get some stuff very, very wrong? Do we have any albums in common? Is there anything that I left out or should have included? Please feel free to tell me, both in the comment section below and also on Discord. Stay tuned, folks, because there's more Top 10 madness on the way. Subscribe if you somehow have not already. Look, there's even more videos here. I love you, and as always, have a great fucking day. Thank you for an amazing 2023. Cheers. All right, I'm taking off this suit. I feel warm and stuffy.